Okay, I think. So let's try to go and work on another set of exercise for JavaScript basics here. And last time we were able to work with variable declarations, and let's talk about conversion and coercion, type conversion and type coercion for this next session. Those are quite sometimes confusing. So let's try to create a folder here. Just go. Let's just have this type coercion and conversion directory here, no? So in the last session, so we did cover declaring and initializing a variable last time. We also have type coercion and conversion and type conversion. Sometimes this can really be confusing, so I'm trying to do a lot of reading about the difference between the two. And type coercion can be explicitly or implicitly done. And one of the things that I did first when I read some articles about this is to first, because I'm not an English major, English is not my parent language, if that's correctly termed. So if we try to look at what the word implicit means, it's not going to be plainly expressed. An explicit, stated clearly and in detail, leaving no room for confusion or doubt. So those are my first initial research that I have done if we will be talking about implicit coercion and explicit coercion. So one thing that we learned in our previous exercise in variables is that values inside of variables are not, or they have a specific data type, right? So if we try to create here an example, type coercion.js. So we have an example of so here we know that if we try to declare let a, and if we console.log that, we should be getting just going to rename this again. We get an undefined, right? And if we try to, so the variable itself, once we try to declare it, it doesn't have a data type, or the data type is specifically undefined. So we do, so you'll see we did cover data type of string, number, boolean, and basically undefined is not having a data type. So we cannot identify what type of data type. The JavaScript compiler is telling us that it doesn't understand what type of data type we are using, right? Let me just close this. So now if we try to reassign this with a 10, let's say we get that 10 value, because we know we can change the value of let. Once we use the let keyword, we can still change that. We can reassign, or we can initialize this declared variable with a value of 10. And if we try to check this with type of keyword, this should be giving us some sort of data type, which is number, right? So we can also do that with b here. And again, console.log b. Then we have let's first console.log that we get an undefined. And now if we try to go back here and we reassign text of string literal. So this is what we call string literal. And if we try to, we have that text of string literal being output on our console. And then if we wanted to check type of b, we should be getting a string as a data type. And we can also do this, let c, and let's say c is assigned the value of true or false, right? Boolean. And of course we need to console.log that and console.log c, and we should be getting true as a value. And again, if we replace that with false, that will be also providing us false, because usually booleans will be having true or false values. And we can also go and try to, of course, type of c. And if we try to work on here, we get a boolean data type. So what happens when we need to use them together? And sometimes we have the tendency that they won't work well together. Sometimes there are some instances, and that's where coercion might comes in. Let's say, let's first have an example here for, let me just comment this out. Review of data types, right? We did some review of data types here. And now sorry for that. Now let's try to go and have an example here. So we know that when we talk about type coercion, this is a process of converting value from one type to another. Okay, so we do have a possibility of converting a string to number. We can try to convert object to boolean. That's another thing that we can try to look on. Or vice versa, we can also convert number to string, and so on, right? So we have some, let's have an example here. Type coercion. This is a process of converting values from one type to another. So let's Let's redeclare and let's use let A again here. Let's declare let A, assign the value of 10. Let B, let's assign the value of a string. Just take note, we are using a string here, and that is signified by the single quote. So let's have 7 here. Then let's see and let's combine both. Okay. So if we try to console log this, console.log answer and let's plus C here. What will be the output that we will be seeing here? So supposedly, we're trying to add two numbers that we want to store inside of a variable that we've declared, the C declaration here. And one thing that would happen here, if we try to run this, we should be able to see, let me just go say by the way this to or perhaps later we can commit this later. Let's first finish this first example. If we try to console.log this, we should be getting something quite different from what we're expecting. So if we try to type coercion.js, we get 107 as the answer to our console.log output on the terminal. So what's happening here right now is that A is a number and B is a string. We know that if we try to console.log both of this again, type of A type of B. Let's also see what will be console.log type of C. Then let's type to console.log C here as the answer. Let's see what that will be proving for us. So you would see we get the variable A, which is a data type of A, or sorry, that's a number. B is a data type of string. And I think much better if we put this not here, but on the console, right? Data type of a number, data type of a string. And this one, what we're seeing here is that both are being treated as string values. So you would see the type of C now was converted, or it's being forced. It's forcing this data type of number on our console.log here that has the value of A, and it's converting it, coercing it. Once we try to concatenate both the values of a number and a string together, the compiler is concatenating the variables A and B here. And we know that the plus operator here can be used for, it has a number of uses. It can be used for appending, concatenating strings together, and it can be performing an addition operation. But again, this is also what we call, just take note that this plus sign is also considered to be as a string concatenation operator. So plus sign is also considered to be the string concatenation operator. So it's serving, and it can also be used for addition. Just as a note here, let me just wrap my text here. So that's something that we have to be aware of when we're using this plus sign symbol. This plus sign symbol, it has a double purpose. It can be used to concatenate strings, and it can also be used for addition. So in this case, it's not adding two numbers together. It's coercing that integer number or the number data type to become a string. So basically, that's the idea of coercion, and this is mostly considered to be dangerous. And we can now move forward with what we call type conversion. Type conversion, if we really need to perform, let's say in our case, we need to perform addition of two integers, we can force the string to become a number so that we can try to go and add them together. And type conversion is an example of this will be, this is going to be explicit. For some cases, developers will normally need to convert two different data types. Let's say, for example, we have specific methods that are going to be used for, that we can try to use for this. We have the number method. Some examples are number method. So this is just basically a function. So we'll talk about functions as we move forward with our JavaScript lessons here. We have also what we call parse float. We have parsed int. So these are methods that will be allowing us to convert strings to numbers. So methods that can be used to convert strings to numbers. And as I mentioned, we can try to convert strings to numbers, numbers to strings. There are some instances you might want to convert dates to numbers, numbers to dates, booleans to numbers, numbers to booleans, vice versa, right? So you would see, if we try to say number, you would see it's giving us intelligence here. It's like a class object, this number here. What if we try to console.log? I'm just going to test this out just to type of number. Is this going to work? Let's just see. So it's a number. So we're getting a type of number. So this is a number. Let's see what that will be doing for us. Sorry. Let's copy this, and just for the purpose of, we get that number 5 getting printed out as a number instead of a string, even though we did use the string single quote literal operator, right? So that's one example of a method that can be used to convert strings to numbers. So let's try to see if what will happen if we try to convert this B to the data type, or we know that this is the variable string 7, and we have this B here. What will happen if we try to use this? Let's just see what will happen there. I think that didn't work. We have type coercion. Let's just clear this out. I think we should use a different method here for this example. We're still getting, that's because we need to redeclare. We need to reassign. So now we get 17 when we use this number method. We have to reassign the value to the variable that we have here, which is the variable B. Because here I'm just calling it, and we're not actually doing anything. We're not able to store it in the variable B here. That's why we're still getting that string. But now the output for our A plus B is giving us a 17. So that means 10 plus 7 is 17, right? And we also can do this in a different way. We can actually try to convert this we do have this explicit coercion example here, right? And just to not get confused, we're doing here, you would see now we have the first declaration is a string. We logged it, the type of B, a data type of string. Then here now, B became a number. And we know the type of C now here. When we try to check this out, it's now a number. Unlike when we still didn't reassign the value of B, you would see we get a string value here in our third console log, right? So this is the first console log. This is the second. just to second console.log. We have the third, just to make sure that we are seeing what's happening here. Third console.log. So you would see without us using this method that we're trying to convert the second data type that we have here, which is a string, to a number, the output that is being produced on our terminal is, in our console.log type of C here, is a string instead of a number. However, if we try to reassign the value of B and we use the method number, we will be able to find that change. From string, it got converted to a number. So we have another method that we can use that will be parsed int here. If we want to approach this in a different way, we can try to do this. Let's have another example. Let's have let ABCD is assigned the value of 5. Let E assign the value of 6. And then again, both of this will just have the same data type of number, data type of string. We want to convert this to, we would want to reassign 6 here to parsed int. And you'll see it's telling us that we need to pass in the string and a radix. So this is basically a base system. If we wanted to use a hexadecimal, we would use 6. If we want to give it base 10 or decimal conversion. So what we're going to use here is the base 10. So let's try to pass in that E and then a base 10 for the radix number. Let's end that statement. Then let's have let C, or let ABCDEF variable here. And let's try to add D plus E. And if we console, let me just copy this. .log F here. Let's see what will be produced for us. So we get 11. So you would see we are able to convert this string once we reassigned the value of the variable we passed in the first argument in the parsed special function or method. We call this method because it's built in Java, the JavaScript language. You would see we are able to convert this variable string data type into a number using the parsed int base 10 radix implementation. So this is what we call a type conversion that is explicitly coercing values, because developers at some point might need to convert some strings to number through the use of some special methods that are built in the JavaScript language. So if we would want to do something like, but just take note first that this is an explicit coercion, right? Explicit. And again, if you're like me, I'm not an English major. It just means that clearly and in detail, leaving no room for confusion or doubt. So we're explicitly saying that we want to convert that string into a number. And that's what we are explicitly saying here, because we're using a method built in JavaScript to reinitialize the value of the variable e, and we're converting this string data type to a number data type explicitly. And we know that JavaScript is a language that sometimes we can say that it's will sometimes automatically convert between different types, and that's what we call implicit conversion or implicit type coercion. I'm not really sure because I did read some documentation and I have seen the term type conversion and type coercion. And basically, if I'm not making a mistake, just correct me if I'm wrong. Type conversion is related to the use of methods that will be converting certain data types to a certain type of another data type. And implicit type coercion, and this is going to be explicitly done by using these methods. And the difference between, let's just have, if you go to MDN docs, this is what this is what you're going to be seeing there. Type conversion is similar to type coercion because we are converting values from one data type to another. Difference of the term type conversion versus type coercion is that type coercion is implicit, and whereas type conversion is or can be implicit or explicit. Okay. And if we search that, let's go to type coercion MDN web docs. I'm going to put that reference here. So you would see we have this similar to type coercion because they both convert values from one data type to another with one key difference. Type coercion is implicit, whereas type conversion can be either implicit or explicit. Let me just go take note of that and put that here. About type coercion and type conversion, right? So at least we know that this exists, right? We know that this exists, type conversion, the term type conversion, and the type coercion, and we know the difference between the two. And type conversions just basically can be implicit or explicit. So implicit meaning it's going to be automatically without us knowing it. And when we say type coercion or type conversion, it can be implicit or explicit. And in this case, in our example here, this is an explicit example because we're explicitly saying that we want to convert this string to a number, right? So basically, one rule. Let's first try to have an implicit type of coercion. Implicit type of coercion would normally have. Let's have an example for this, just to. Conversion. I'm going to call this explicit type conversion. So in our example, let's try to do this some. Perhaps we can create a function. I think that will be a better way to demonstrate this. Let's have an implicit. Let's try to have an example of a function here. So just don't worry if this is not going to be something that let's say we want to have an implicit example and we want to convert, let's say, if 1 is equals to 1, return I'm not sure if this is going to work. A plus B. And let A assign the value of 1. Let B assign the value of 1. Or console.log. Let's try to. Let's first try this out, guys. A plus B. What will happen if we try to do this? I think we don't need this anymore. We just need to invoke this. So we're getting, if A is equals to 1, I think if A A 1 is equals to 1, we're still getting 2, right? So let's see. How do we demonstrate an implicit example here? 1 is equals to 1. think we can just try to let's have 1. So we're getting 11 here, right? Sorry, I'm thinking about the logic of what we want to do here. So we're checking a condition. If 1 is equals to 1, we can see that let A, we declared it as a variable 1. We initialize it with a value of number. This is a number. This is a string. And this is just basically equality operator. So that means we're checking if the two values are equal to one another. And what we're getting here is that it's actually converting again. What's happening right now here. We should be getting a value of string also here. If we console.log C, what is the type of C right now? That's a question that we should be asking, right? Excuse me, let me just comment this out just to clean some things out here. Just to have some testing of what's happening right now. We're getting a string for the type of C, and that is because we are implicitly coercing this B here. Automatically, the JavaScript compiler realizes that, or it's automatically coercing the number 1, which is a string, and this number 1, which is a number data type, into a string. It's coercing it implicitly. Okay, because supposedly this should not be correct. It should not be turning A plus B to 1, 1 here, right? Because this is a number, this is a string, and this is a number. It should not be adding. It should not be adding automatically those two values, right? So that's what one example of implicit coercion. It's, let's say, converting values automatically. Even if we didn't really want that to be the thing to be output on our console here. If we try to recreate this, and we also create a function explicit here, and we do the same thing, and we'll just try to invoke this. Just don't get confused with what I'm doing here right now. We'll talk more about functions as we move forward with our discussion. I can just put this, let's just follow this syntax here. But let's have I think we can just have this example here without any. Let me just format my document. It's prettier here. Let's see what will this be producing for us. think that's not calling explicit here. Let's say we want to invoke that here. Will that work? I'm just testing things out. 11. Sorry, I think that worked. We don't need to do this anymore. It did work. I think I just got confused. So we have that answer 11. And we have this 11 also being I think we need to just say answer, explicit answer. And we have this implicit implicit answer. Sorry. Let's concatenate this C here. Just to not get confused on whatever's getting output. Explicit answer is 11 because we're explicitly saying we are declaring the variable D with 5. E, we're declaring the variable E with a string literal. And we are declaring, reinitializing it with a parsed method. We're trying to convert that string. So we're explicitly saying we want to convert that string 6 to we want to convert this string to a number. And then we're adding here the values of variable D and E to explicitly display a value of added value of 5 and 6. So let's say I would want to have, let's just follow the similar syntax here just to type of F here. So we have a number and we have a string that is happening here. Here we are coercing this implicitly because of the flow that we've done here. You can see implicit. We created a function that we're invoking. We also have an explicit function that we're trying to invoke. And we are able to go and explicitly answer the F variable here as 6 plus 5. We get that 11. However, here 1 is equals to 1 is producing that output of A plus B is equals to 11, which is supposedly should not be 11. It should be 2, right? So if we want to explicitly say that, I think we can try to, what if we try to what should be the output there? But that we get the 2 value there that we're, but of course we want to have an example for an implicit type coercion that will be converting values automatically. And this is where this becomes a bit dangerous, especially if you're using this equality operator. However, if we have an strict equality operator, what will happen? So you would see we're not getting any because this is false. This is returning a false value. This is returning a false value. If we try to have an else statement here, error. Data types, just to demonstrate an error. Both are different. A and B are different data types, right? A and B are different data types. So we're just console logging that A and B are different data types. That's why we're not able to console.log that implicit answer anymore. Okay, so that's just one possible scenario that, but let's stick with, we'll talk more about functions and different operators. So that's one of the other things. Another thing that I just want to discuss here is another example that I just want to, what if we wanted to pass in a string that will not be converted into a numeric value? What if we passed in a string that will not be converted into a numeric value? What will happen? So let's try that out, right? Let's say let D send the value of parse int, and we are going to pass in a string here, and we'll be putting a radix of base 10. Let's try to console.log D ABCD, and let's see what will happen. We're getting that not a number. So NaN, this is specifically, this should produce a NaN, not a number, which is basically not an error. It's just telling us that the value that we passed in our first argument for our method parsed int is not a number. This is not an error. It's telling us that the value is not a number, right? So not a number. So we also have a method. So let's first try to pass in here git. First we can commit this, I think. So now, what we want to do is, let's try to use another method. Let's pass in ABCDE is, you would see there's this is none, function is not a number. And let's pass in D. So there are a bunch of built-in functions in JavaScript that you might encounter. And one thing that I learned from my mentor in game dev, from Home Team Game Dev, Sir Chris, or Chris, he mentioned that in learning a programming language, You don't really need to memorize everything. It's more on, it's like you're looking at a dictionary in in if you're going to compare it with the English language. So just have that in mind. If you're not yet getting some of the things that we're discussing here, that's perfectly okay. The more you engage yourself and immerse yourself into the language, I'm sure you'll get better at understanding whatever we're trying to do here. So rinse and repeat. Just try to rinse and repeat whatever we're doing here, right? And I'm sure you'll get and build projects. Uh that's one of the things that really helped me in trying to further improve my understanding of a programming language that I'm trying to learn. Okay? So let's see what will happen if we try to console.log e here. What happens if that we try to use that built-in method? So we're seeing here that we're getting a true value because this is actually a boolean. We did see that if we try to look at IntelliSense, is none is a boolean, right? It's telling us that is none is a boolean. So there are plenty of examples of different types of methods in JavaScript that you can use for converting values. And here we just tackled some of it. We just tried to, I'm hoping that you got the idea of coercion and the idea of explicit and implicit type of coercion. And we can relate the term conversion, type conversion, that can be implicit or explicit. Whereas when we say implicit, it's going to be converting values automatically. Okay. Just similar to this one. Okay, so that's it for this session for the meantime. And I hope you learned something and see you on our next session.